Rain stitched the city into one long blur, and our lights kept sewing through it, red on wet black. I'd been driving long enough for the wheel to mold to my hands. The heater pushed tired air that smelled like rubber gloves and old coffee. Beside me, my partner breathed slow, eyes half closed, the radio whispering in and out like a restless sleeper. The streets were quiet, storefronts shuttered. A stray cat slipped under a dumpster and vanished like it knew to hide from the weather. I told myself this was the kind of night you bank. Steady calls, predictable roads, nothing sharp around the edges. Wipers clicked. Sirens stayed off. The city exhaled. In that hush, I caught a faint tone under the static, something too soft to be a dispatch ping. It came and went, like a heartbeat heard through a wall. I turned the volume up. Only rain answered. Still the feeling lingered, a weight in the air, the kind you don't see until it moves. I checked the clock. 2:37 a.m. Before the shift settled back into routine, the night cleared its throat, and everything started counting down. The hours between midnight and dawn are the quietest ones in the city. Most nights they feel like borrowed time when everything mechanical starts to hum instead of roar. Our ambulance rolled through those empty streets like a ghost with a purpose. Lights bouncing off puddles, rain thinning into mist. Lena sat beside me, sipping cold coffee, tracing circles on the lid with her thumb. We didn't talk much. After years on the job, silence becomes its own language. Dispatch had kept us moving earlier in the night, standard calls, nothing remarkable. A woman fainting in her kitchen. A small crash with more fear than injury. The kind of work that lets your mind drift but keeps your body in rhythm. The back of the rig still smelled faintly of antiseptic and wet leather from the last patient. I remember thinking it was comforting, in a strange way, how predictable it all felt. We stopped by the 24-hour diner on 5th for a refill, nodding to the same tired cook who always kept one eye on the TV. The rain outside slowed, and the reflection of our ambulance in the window looked almost peaceful. I caught myself watching it for a few seconds too long. How still it was, how unreal. Back on the road, the city felt hollow. Store signs flickered like half-forgotten thoughts. A single siren wailed somewhere distant, then fell quiet again. I drove slower than usual, not out of caution but habit. There was a rhythm to the route, a kind of heartbeat in the repetition. Everything felt in place. Lena leaned back half asleep and muttered something about how calm nights never last. I laughed, told her not to jinx it. She smiled without opening her eyes. Minutes later, the radio cracked, just a flicker of static, quick, sharp, almost shy. We didn't think much of it then, but that sound would be the last normal thing we'd hear all night. The first thing that caught my attention was the tone. It wasn't the usual sharp ping we were used to. It came slower, stretched out, as if the system was thinking before speaking. Then a voice followed, distant and hollow. Unit 914, respond to Ridgefield Crossing. Possible single vehicle collision. The words faded in and out like they were fighting through water. I looked at Lena, waiting for her reaction, but she only frowned, turning the volume up. The call repeated once, this time clearer, but clipped halfway through the coordinates. Then silence. The screen flickered with the location text, but something about it didn't sit right. Ridgefield Crossing hadn't been active for years. The bridge there was washed out after a flood, sealed with concrete barriers and warning signs. It wasn't a place dispatch would ever send us. I radioed back for confirmation. Static answered. The frequency was alive but empty, a hiss that seemed to breathe on its own. Lena checked her tablet for updates, but the map spun, the signal stuttering. Could be a relay error, she said, trying to sound casual. We'll get clarification soon. But the system didn't refresh. The line stayed locked on that same location, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. My hands tightened on the wheel. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to wait until dispatch cleared it as a glitch. But procedure drilled itself too deep into us. You never assume. You respond. We turned onto the highway, the wipers slicing through heavier rain now. The night looked thicker ahead, like the road was dissolving into the dark. For a moment, the dashboard lights dimmed, just slightly, and a faint whisper came through the speaker again. Not words this time, more like someone exhaling into the microphone. Lena shifted in her seat and said quietly, "Feels off, doesn't it?" I nodded, pretending I hadn't heard the whisper form the shape of my name. We kept driving anyway, because that's what you do. You go where you're called, even when the call shouldn't exist. The GPS took us off the main road and onto a stretch that shouldn't have existed. The sign for Ridgefield Crossing leaned halfway into the ditch, rusted and half swallowed by weeds. I slowed down, watching the beam of our headlights break through layers of fog that looked almost alive. The rain had softened into a steady hiss, the kind that hides every other sound beneath it. The bridge came into view, or what was left of it. A section of guardrail was twisted outward, and beyond it lay darkness, the kind that eats light whole. The road was slick and uneven, scattered with branches and gravel washed down from the hill. Lena leaned forward, scanning the edges for movement, for metal, for anything that could explain the call. But there was nothing. No wreck, no smoke, just the steady flicker of our headlights against the wet asphalt. I pulled the ambulance to the shoulder and killed the siren. The silence that followed was too complete. Even the rain seemed to hold back, falling softer, almost respectfully. I stepped out, the cold biting through my uniform, the air thick with the smell of wet soil and engine grease. The fog swallowed sound in every direction. Then I saw them. Tire tracks, fresh ones, cutting across the slick road and stopping right at the broken rail. The end of the line looked jagged, like something heavy had been dragged. I crouched down, touching the cold metal, and my glove came away streaked with a faint gray dust that didn't belong to the road. Lena called out from behind me, her voice low but steady. "There's movement down there." I followed her flashlight beam over the edge. At first I saw nothing but the shifting fog. Then a faint shape appeared, a single headlight still glowing, half buried in the ditch below. The beam trembled weakly through the rain, cutting a pale line through the dark. My stomach tightened. Someone was down there, and even from that distance I could hear it. 3 slow knocks, muffled but clear, coming from inside the wreck. That sound followed me for years. The car was wedged into the mud at a steep angle, one side buried, the other hanging over the edge of the ditch. The windshield was fractured in a spiderweb pattern, the glass glittering faintly under our flashlights. Steam curled out from under the hood, rising like smoke and vanishing into the fog above. Lena went first, sliding down the embankment with the trauma kit strapped across her chest. I followed, my boots sinking into cold water with every step. The closer we got, the clearer the knocking became, steady, deliberate, as if someone was trying to keep time. Through the cracked window I saw her. A woman in the driver's seat, mid-30s maybe, rain dripping from her hair onto her pale face. She wasn't looking at us, but straight ahead, eyes wide open and unfocused. Her lips moved slightly, though no sound came out. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" I said, pulling the door open. It gave way with a groan, metal bending reluctantly. Her head turned slowly toward me, and that's when I saw the blood, thin streams tracing down her temple but already drying, as if it had been there for hours. Her pulse was faint but present. I called out her vitals, my voice steady out of habit. Lena checked her airway, then nodded. We secured her collar, lifted her carefully onto the backboard, and began the climb back up. Her skin was cold, colder than the rain should have made it. Once inside the ambulance, I checked her ID. The name was smudged but readable. Mara Ellis. The photo showed the same face, though her eyes in the picture were brighter, alive. I glanced at the date on the license. It had expired over a decade ago. Lena didn't notice. She was too focused on hooking up the monitor, adjusting the lines. Mara's lips trembled again, and this time a sound escaped, hoarse and slow. "Don't go back," she whispered. Her gaze met mine, and for the first time that night I felt something colder than fear. It was recognition. The back door shut with a heavy thud that echoed longer than it should have. Inside, the air felt thick, almost stale, as if the rain hadn't just been pouring seconds ago. Lena moved quickly, snapping gloves, checking lines, speaking in short, clipped phrases. I stayed behind the wheel, eyes flicking between the mirror and the road ahead. But I couldn't stop glancing back. The monitor came alive in bursts. Flatline, spike, flatline again. Every few seconds it froze completely, as if time paused inside the machine. The beeping wasn't steady anymore. It stuttered, catching its breath between notes. Lena adjusted the cables, muttering about faulty sensors, but her voice sounded strange, muffled, like we were underwater. The heater clicked, then went silent. The air turned cold enough to fog my breath. The windows frosted faintly around the edges, even though the storm outside had eased. The smell of disinfectant mixed with something faintly metallic, sharp enough to taste. I told myself it was from the crash, from the car's radiator or blood on our gloves. But that didn't explain why the scent grew stronger with every mile. When I looked in the rearview mirror, Mara's eyes were open again. She shouldn't have been conscious, but she was staring straight up at the ceiling, her expression empty. Then her head turned slightly toward me, slow and deliberate. "Lena," I whispered. "She's awake." Lena glanced back. The monitor flatlined again, though Mara's chest still rose and fell, shallow but steady. The pulse reading blinked back to life without her touching it. Then the radio crackled. Not dispatch, just static at first. Then a faint voice beneath it, impossible to make out except for one sound. My name. I froze. The voice came again, louder this time, clearer. My name repeated twice, drawn out like a warning. Lena didn't hear it. She was focused on the vitals. I turned the radio off. The silence after was worse, the kind that makes you realize how loud your heartbeat really is. When I looked back once more, Mara's lips had stopped moving, but she was smiling now. The rain came back all at once, pounding the roof so hard it sounded like fists. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, keeping my eyes on the broken yellow lines ahead. The wipers struggled to keep up, smearing water instead of clearing it. Behind me, the heart monitor kept spitting out a rhythm that made no sense. 2 beats, silence, then one long, dragging tone. Lena called out numbers from the back, her voice shaky but trying to sound professional. I could hear her fumbling with the oxygen mask, metal clinking against metal. Then came the sound I'll never forget. A slow inhale that didn't belong to either of us. Deep, wet, too close. I slammed the brakes. The ambulance jolted, tires screaming against the slick road. For a second, everything went black. Every light on the dashboard died. The siren cut off mid-howl, and the hum of the engine fell into total silence. The only sound left was the storm pressing against the metal. "Lena," I called out. No answer. I turned around. The stretcher was empty. The straps lay neatly crossed, the blanket untouched. Mara was gone. Lena stood frozen by the back doors, eyes wide, staring at something I couldn't see. "She was right here," she whispered, her voice trembling. I turned to grab the syringe and she wasn't. Then the headlights flickered back on, flooding the road ahead with pale light. And there she was, standing dead center on the asphalt, barefoot, drenched, her hospital gown clinging to her skin. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The rain slid off her face like oil. I couldn't make myself open the door. Every muscle locked. Then through the static on the dead radio, her voice broke through, soft but clear. "You shouldn't have come back." The words echoed through every speaker, low and distorted, overlapping themselves until it sounded like a chorus whispering inside the walls. The lights flickered again, and just for an instant she was closer. Right outside the windshield, eyes hollow and unblinking. The next flash of lightning swallowed her. When I looked again, the road was empty. Only the monitor beeped once, then stopped. And that's when I realized the clock on the dash hadn't moved in 10 minutes. When the lights came back on, everything was still. The storm had quieted to a faint drizzle, the wipers dragging across the glass with tired effort. My hands were still locked on the wheel, but the engine was cold beneath my feet. The siren switch was off, though I couldn't remember touching it. Lena sat in the back, pale, her gloves half peeled, eyes fixed on the empty stretcher. The smell of ozone clung to the air, sharp and unnatural, like the aftermath of lightning striking too close. We didn't speak for a long time. There was nothing to say that would sound real. I finally reached for the radio. The signal was dead. No static, no background hum. Just silence. When it finally came alive, the voice on the other end was calm, almost casual. "Unit 914, report status." The timestamp on the dashboard read 3:18 a.m., but the call log on the screen was blank. I gave our report anyway, my voice dry and mechanical. "Patient lost en route. No visual contact on scene, no secondary injuries." A pause followed. Then dispatch replied softly. "Copy that, 9-14. No record of your call tonight." Lena's head lifted, confusion replacing fear for a second. "Say again?" I asked. The line went dead. When we reached the hospital, the lights in the bay flickered as we pulled in. The staff moved like everything was normal. One nurse came over to help unload, but when she opened the doors and saw the empty stretcher, she hesitated. I handed her the paperwork, but the name field looked wrong, blurry like the ink had bled on its own. The charge nurse checked the system. "There's no patient under that name," she said flatly, sliding the clipboard back. "Are you sure this is from tonight?" I didn't answer. Lena just stared at the wet floor beneath us, lips trembling. We stayed in the parking lot long after our shift ended, the ambulance engine idling, both of us too numb to drive away. That night I learned silence has a sound of its own, and it follows you home. For days after, I kept replaying the night in my head, trying to fill in the blank spots my memory refused to hold still. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that bridge again, the fog curling like smoke, the broken rail gleaming under our lights. The call log still sat on the dashboard computer, frozen at the same line of text. Ridgefield Crossing, active response. Yet when I tried to open the report, it crashed, as if that part of the system didn't exist anymore. Lena took a few days off after that. She said she needed to clear her head, maybe visit her sister upstate. I couldn't blame her. I kept working, thinking routine would help. It didn't. Every time the radio cracked, my chest tightened, expecting that same warped voice to break through again. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove back to Ridgefield during daylight. The rain had dried, but the air there still carried a coldness that didn't fit the season. The road was closed, barricaded by rusted fencing and warning signs half buried in weeds. I parked on the shoulder and walked up to where the bridge used to stand. There was nothing left, just open space, the valley stretching below. A local deputy spotted me and pulled over. When I told him why I was there, his face went blank. "You must be mistaken," he said. "That bridge has been gone since 2010. Landslide took it out. No one's driven down that road in 15 years. I asked if he'd ever heard of a woman named Mara Ellis. He hesitated, then nodded. She was the one in that crash. Died instantly. They never found her car, washed away with the bridge. He started his truck and left me standing there, the wind pressing against my back. I checked my phone for the time, but the screen refused to light. Later that night, I pulled up the hospital's old records. Mara Ellis, deceased October 21st, 2010, same name, same face. The dashcam footage from that night was corrupted except for one frame. Headlights frozen on an empty stretch of road, and the faint outline of a figure standing where the bridge used to be. It's been years since that storm, yet some nights it still feels close, like the air remembers. I've worked hundreds of shifts since then, miles of open road, countless calls. But every time I hear the radio tone, a small part of me braces for that voice again, that distorted whisper that knew my name before I ever said it aloud. I told myself it was exhaustion, or shock, or a trick of the storm. That explanation worked for a while, but the truth is some memories never lose their temperature. They stay cold no matter how much time passes. There are nights when I'm driving home after a late call, when the sky folds into that same color it had back then, a bruised gray heavy with rain, and the world feels too quiet. That's when I hear it again. The faint hum beneath the static, a single frequency that shouldn't be there. Sometimes it's gone in seconds, other times it lingers just long enough for me to know it's real. I've switched ambulances, changed routes, even moved to a different district. It doesn't matter. The call still comes through every few months. Always the same tone, always the same coordinates, Ridgefield Crossing. I never answer, not anymore, but the first time it happened again, I froze, staring at the map glowing on the screen. For a split second, I saw the old road perfectly clear, no fog, no damage. Just a bridge waiting to be crossed. Then it vanished. I don't talk about it with anyone. Lena transferred to another city years ago. We haven't spoken since. Sometimes I think she hears it too, but chooses silence. Maybe that's how we cope with what we can't explain. I still drive at night. It's what I know. But when the siren echoes through the rain, it doesn't sound like help anymore. It sounds like something calling back. And on those rare, heavy nights when the roads are empty and the static hums low in the distance, I swear I see it again. The faint glow of a headlight in the fog, right where the bridge used to be. I keep my eyes forward, but deep down I know she's still waiting.